use lighting to tell the story. How can you use lighting to tell a story? I think sometimes people even forget that that's an option, but just by changing the time of day in an illustration can mean 100 things. Like if a person's running through the forest and it's the middle of the day, that's one thing. If it's the middle of the night, that could mean something entirely different, right? So how have you seen people either forget that or mess it up, the lighting thing?
Well, this is right up your alley. I used to use lighting a lot in my illustrations early on, and now I actually don't use lighting. I mean, I use time of day and seasonal kind of cues, but I don't use light. I don't use value that like a character gets hit with light on one side and has shadow on the other side. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. It's a huge topic, but rather than talk about how people get it wrong, I did an exercise for one of my classes where I illustrated
how you got it right.
Well, I'm showing options basically. So I illustrated an attic scene, a crowded attic with tons of objects, and a little boy. You know how you have the the pull down stairs, the ones that hit Chevy Chase in the head during Christmas Vacation. What are those called? Stairs to the
pull
attic.
Down stairs.
Pull down stairs, ladder, pull down ladder,
stairs.
Something like that.
I'm sure the Germans have an actual word for it. They've got a word for it.
Anyway,
a Blickenstoff.
Something like
whatever.
Googling that now.
So he's sticking his head up in the attic, kind of like I was doing this earlier.
Yeah.
So his head is sticking through that hole, and you can see he's looking off to the side. This little boy is kind of looking off the side, like he's looking for something, or he heard a sound in the attic. And there's like toy, there's an old toy monkey with the symbols toy up there, and there's a mannequin, and there's all kinds of different junk up there. And there's a snake that happens to be up in the attic. And I put things that don't even necessarily belong in an attic. But then I lit it like there was a kind of a spot of light coming through the attic window, hitting different parts of the illustration. And it told a totally different story on 5 different parts that it was highlighting. This little beam of light coming through the window. And because now the principle is, in your illustration, the place that gets the highest contrast is almost usually the focal point, unless you introduce a color like red or orange, some really warm accent color that's by itself. So I think that's pretty much usually the hierarchy. If you introduce a saturated red into your illustration in one place, that will almost always become the focal point. Second to that is the highest contrast. Do I have that right, Lee?
That's right.
Okay. So we haven't checked our teaching methods with each other before, so I have to.
That's
check.
right. That's right on the money in terms of what I believe it to be. Okay.
So the highest contrast point often becomes the focal point, and usually that's, if you've got if you're dealing with an interior, or even at night, if you've got a beam of light, where the light hits often is the place that's the highest contrast. If there's shadows around or other dark valued objects, and so that fits right in with the lighting.
Can we put in our show notes that sequence of illustrations you did? I don't know. I think it was for a class or whatever, but it's an outdoor scene with the snow, and it starts out an ambient light scene, and then you have all these different lighting things. He did the same scene like he's talking about, like 5 different ways with different lighting and stuff.
So cool. Yeah.
It was really cool. And I think you can tell a lot about your own illustration sensibilities depending on which one of those you like. There was one with really bright light and one with kind of cool light. And then I liked the one with just the ambient light, which was no light, which
I did too.
Exactly what I was saying.
And I remember when you said that, and I was thinking, because I go hiking in the snow a lot, and there's a lot of days that are just those overcast days and they're really cool because objects seem like they're floating almost. Yeah. When you're dealing with snow, because there's no cast shadows sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to post that, because that's a cool assignment to do. If you guys have ever had it, where you just take one scene and just illustrate it a couple of different ways based on only lighting. I do that a lot in the concept design classes, and it's always so much fun to do that.
Yeah.